President Trump is expected to address where things stand with Ukraine during his congressional address tonight, one day after the U.S. halted military aid for the war-torn country. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab tells us more from Kyiv.
Well, there's a real sense of anticipation tonight here in Ukraine as Ukrainians are poised to wake up in the morning to hear what President Trump has said in his address to Congress. Many believe that he will talk about Ukraine, especially after we learned that the Trump administration has suspended billions of dollars of military assistance to Ukraine. Military assistance that this country has relied on so heavily for the past 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion. In fact, we've been speaking to Ukrainian officials who tell us that if this suspension doesn't remain paused, as the Trump administration has described it, this country could really start running out of vital ammunition in a matter of months. Whatever the case, President Zelenskyy has posted on social media that he regretted that outburst, if you will, or that shouting match that erupted in the Oval Office on Friday. Of course, saying even further that he wanted a constructive relationship with the U.S. and even proposed the outline of a ceasefire with Russia. Still, it seems that this relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine remains incredibly tense, and many people here in the capital, Kyiv, and beyond are certainly hoping that Washington and the government here in Kyiv can move beyond that. Back to you.
Imtiaz Tyab, thank you. President Trump has made several claims regarding his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, since their heated meeting at the White House Friday. Among those claims include accusations that President Zelenskyy does not want a peace deal with Russia to potentially end the war in Ukraine. In a Truth Social post Monday, President Trump said in part, quote, "It is what I was saying. This guy doesn't want there to be peace as long as he has America's backing." Let's bring in CBS News confirmed executive editor Rhona Tarrant. So, Rhona, how accurate are the president's claims here? And could you clarify what Russia, what Ukraine, what the Trump administration, what they all want from a potential peace deal?
Yeah, so as you said, President Trump leveled these claims against Zelenskyy since that very heated meeting at the White House last Friday. He said, look, this guy just doesn't want peace. Now, Zelenskyy has consistently said he does want peace. In case of today, he actually went on X and he laid out some things that he might be willing to accept as a first step. Now, this was a truce of some kind, release of prisoners. He said, I'd be willing to accept this if Russia would as well. Now, again, that is a first step. Now, the final outcome is really kind of anyone's guess. Ukraine wants NATO membership and they want to return to their pre-2014 borders. So those areas in eastern Ukraine that Russia has annexed, they want them to remain part of Ukraine. Russia obviously wants them to remain part of Russia. Now, the U.S. side, they want a swift end to this. This is what the Trump administration has said. And they've also signaled that they think that maybe what Ukraine wants might be unrealistic. So as I said, as Zelenskyy coming out today saying very much, I do want peace, here are potential things.
And Zelenskyy wants security guarantees,
exactly,
which President Trump is unwilling to do.
Exactly. So him coming out today saying, like, this is what I might be willing to accept, it would be one step, but that final outcome really remains very unclear.
Right, because Zelenskyy doesn't believe that Putin is going to hold to a ceasefire.
Right.
So President Trump has been critical of Zelenskyy's approval rating. He's been saying that essentially Ukraine is refusing to have elections. Can you fact check those claims for us?
So it is true that Zelenskyy was elected to a 5-year term in 2019. There were supposed to be elections in 2024. Those were not held. The reason they were not held, though, is because there's martial law in Ukraine. And under a martial law, elections are not allowed. So, in fact, they are actually not allowed to hold elections. I mean, think about this practically. You have the millions of Ukrainians who have fled, who would maybe potentially not be able to vote. You have the hundreds of thousands of soldiers on the front lines who would not be able to vote. The practicalities of getting polling places up and running. So for many reasons, they do not have elections until that state of emergency is over. Now, in terms of his approval ratings, President Trump has sort of put out a lot of numbers. He said they're as low as 4%. Now, there's no evidence for that. By one measure, One Kyiv Institute recently, they did a poll in February. They found that 56% of Ukrainians trust Zelenskyy. Now, that is actually up by 5 percentage points since December, but it is actually lower than, 2022. In May 2022, it was up as far as 90%, but certainly like strong, definitely not a 4% approval rating.
And President Trump also said Monday that he is the only U.S. president to never have given up any of Ukraine's land to Russia. What has the confirmed team found out about that claim?
So obviously to say up top, like no US president has given Ukrainian land to Russia, nor do they have the power to, obviously. But what he seems to be referring to is the two major events in Ukraine over the last decade or so. The first being that illegal annexation of Crimea, which happened during the Obama years, and the second being that full-scale invasion in 2022, which happened during the Biden years. Now, worth pointing out, during both those administrations, the US responded. In the Obama years, they offered financial assistance, sanctions against Russia, though non-lethal aid was sent. And during the Biden years, of course, they also sent that military assistance and that humanitarian aid as well. But bottom line on this one is no US president can actually give that over. And those contested areas in eastern Ukraine, the US continues to recognize them as part of Ukraine.
Okay, Rhona Tarrant, thank you.
Thank you.
Reminder, our Confirmed team will be working on a series of fact checks of the president's address as well as the Democratic response tonight. You can follow along on CBSNews.com.